seeing exactly what was downloaded. Is it possible to extract data from Wireshark to reassemble files that were downloaded by users? The answer is absolutely yes. Let's begin. I was on a bus a few days ago coming back from an event, and I overheard somebody a couple seats down from me talking about doing push-ups. And they're saying, you can do about 100 push-ups a day if you use a countertop. So you don't go all the way to the floor, just push off on the countertop, and that way you can get a lot of reps in, and it's not as hard as doing a full-blown push-up on the ground. And I thought to myself, that's a great idea. So you can get more reps in, you can build up your muscle, and then, eventually you can go all the way to the ground and do the same amount perhaps if you work out. Now, what does that got to do with Wireshark? I was guilty of eavesdropping. I was listening into their conversation, and I found something interesting. Of course, when we're doing Wireshark and protocol analysis, we want to make sure that we have the authorization every single time to capture the data and to look at it, because the reality is, the network may be ours, quote unquote. However, the data and the information going across that network may be other people's information. So having that in mind, let's say that with authorization, we've captured some data and our manager comes up to us and says, you know what? I need to know what files were downloaded or what images that user saw. Now, the tricky part is this. If the user was using some type of encryption like IPsec or SSL, we aren't going to be able to recreate images if all that data is encrypted when Wireshark has access to it. However, if they use plain text protocols like FTP for file transfer or HTTP for web browsing, we can recreate a lot of that content because all the data could be sitting right there inside of our capture file. A couple basic settings that you might want to check to verify they're in place are reassembly options. If you right click on, for example, TCP or HTTP, you'll have this option in the drop down called protocol preferences. For HTTP, I'd recommend you enable all the reassembly options. And if you right clicked on TCP, I would suggest you enable the subdissector to reassemble TCP streams. That'll make it a lot easier as we look at objects inside of HTTP. Now, to make it easy, I have included the preferences file from the profile I'll be using in this video in the Nugget Lab files. So if you want to use that same preferences file, you'll have those settings already in place. What you and I get to do in this video are take a look at exactly how to export HTTP objects out of a capture file. And that could include graphical images such as JPEGs and PNG files. If we're interested in having a copy of files that the user downloaded via FTP, we'll also take a look at how exactly to find files and to reassemble those out of the existing capture file. So let's start off with what we have. We have this reassembly.pcapng file, which is available in the Nugget Labs file. The profile I'm using is called See What the User Sees, and the preferences file for that is also in the Nugget Lab files. And I've currently got 5,774 packets. There's no display filter in place. So let's say management walks up to us and says, okay, here's what we need. We need copies of every JPEG image associated with this capture. Now, our first question might be back to them. Can you give us an IP address associated with what you're searching for? Because that would help us refine our search and make it faster. They may or may not give us that information, but if they did, it would help us refine our search, and we could also verify that the IP address isn't assigned to you or me, which would be also very, very handy information. But presuming they didn't give us any additional information, they just want the JPEG images, one way of extracting those images would be to use the file menu. So without any display filter set at all. So we've got the full 5,774 packets displayed. Let's go ahead and simply go to File. And from this drop-down menu, we're going to hover over Export Objects, and we're going to select HTTP. This is going to assist us in identifying all of the HTTP objects, and included in those objects will be image files, including JPEGs. So we'll select that, and it'll open up a brand new window for us. So in this new pop-up window, which is all of the HTTP objects, we're going to have on the content type, we have a lot of text, we have some applications, but we're also going to have some images. If we scroll down through this list, you notice that here we have some images. So we've got some PNG files. We've also got a GIF file. We also have a JPEG file. And from here, what we could do is simply click on Save All, and it will save all of that to our file system. We can put that on a CD or a flash drive or put it on a file system that's shareable and then make that available to the people who requested it. Another option, if we're looking for a specific file, we can simply scroll down until we actually find what we're looking for. For example, I'm going to scroll down to, let's find something big. I'm looking at file size as well in this column. I want a fairly big graphic. So here we go, 238K right there. Packet number 3124. So when I highlight it here, it highlights that in the background, so we have the detail of that packet as well. And the sweet thing about this is that this packet 3124, it's only 1436 bytes right here, but check it out. It's representing the tail packet, or the very last packet, of 238,000 bytes. And that 238K represents the actual file size. So there was a TCP session for downloading that image, and if we reassemble all those TCP segments together, it was just over 238K, which represents that file. Now the question is, how do we actually download that file? And the answer to that is pretty straightforward. We select the file right here, and we simply click on Save As. And that will ask us, hey, where do you want to save this? We'll tell it, and poof, that file is now saved on our local file system. So we'll click on Save As. And this folder right here represents this video. So I'm going to save this file as part of the Nugget Lab files, along with the preferences, which is part of my profile, and the capture file that we're currently using. We'll save it right here, and we'll just leave the same name, the homepage hero for SDN. And a simple click on Save will do that for us. I'm also going to go ahead and close this HTTP object list. So now if we go to the file system at the same location, which is right here, and bring it in, here's the homepage hero SDN, which I just saved from the packet capture. So there's a miniature view of it. If I double click on it, it'll bring it up in a new window so we can see it. So this is a graphic about an emerging concept called software-defined networking. And for a family-friendly representation of how to view a graphic from a capture, this graphic works perfectly. So we've taken a look at how to export HTTP objects, including graphical images, but what about an FTP download? Somebody downloads an FTP file. Can we recreate that file? Can we have it as a local copy if we want to extract it from the packet capture? The answer is absolutely yes. Now, to reassemble an FTP download, it'd be very important to first of all have some FTP traffic inside of our capture. So how would we quickly decide out of these 5,000 plus packets if there's any FTP traffic? One way, a quick way, would just be use a display filter saying, is there any FTP at all? And the answer says, yes, there is. And we could start here, actually. We could say, okay, great. Let's take this FTP conversation, right click, and simply say, I want to go ahead and follow the TCP stream, which will open up a brand new window. In this brand new window, it shows us the play-by-play of what's happening. Okay, we've got a 3COM server. We have a user logging in as administrator. It's asking for a password. The password is Cisco123. They negotiated some ports they're going to use. There was a request to give a list of the files present. It looks like he tried to download and was successful in downloading this file called smallfile.txt. It was successful, and then the session was closed. Fantastic. So we know there's this file called smallfile.txt. So this is TCP stream 109, but I say we go for something more exciting than smallfile.txt. So let's go ahead and let's remove this conversation as part of the filter. So we're going to say filter out this stream. So now it's looking for FTP and not stream 109. So let's take a look at this next conversation. So we'll right click on this and say follow TCP stream. Now when I do this, that's going to totally wipe out my display filter. It's going to replace it with whatever this current TCP stream is all about. So that's okay. I'm going to click on follow TCP stream. The new display filter is saying, okay, this is stream 112 with the stream index number. So this time the user is logging in as anonymous. The password they're supplying is me@here.com. They do some port negotiation. Then we have this file request for frog.jpg, and then it transfers the file successfully, and then they close the connection. So let's say we want to get frog.jpg, because I'm a visual learner. I like seeing graphical images, and this will be a little more exciting than, retrieving some text file. So let's see if we can extract frog.jpg out of this session. So let's just keep that in mind, that frog.jpg is the file, and that's a lowercase f. Frog.jpg is the file that we're looking for inside of the FTP session. And I'll go ahead and close this. So this packet right here, 5716, that's the actual TCP conversation we were looking at. We're currently filtered based on that TCP conversation. But here's what I noticed about FTP in general. We're going to have, let's say we have a PC that's acting as a client, and we have a server over here. So when the PC makes a connection, it's going to go to the well-known port of TCP port 21. It'll be from some high-numbered port. In fact, we don't even have to guess. So right here in this packet 5716, which is a response coming from the server. So the server is .30 and the client is .47. This reply that's coming back, it's coming from port 21 and it's coming back to 49554. So when the client established this connection, it sourced it from this high-numbered port going to the well-known port of 21. So as we look at this stream here, this is the control channel, if you will, for FTP. However, what happens is when that user requests a file to be downloaded, we're going to open up some brand new ports. When the client requests a download of a file, the server is likely, if we're using standard FTP, to go ahead and use port 20 as the source port going back to the port of the client. And that's going to be a different port also. It's not going to be 49,554. It'll be another port. And I'm going to put a big question mark there because I don't know what it is at the moment. Because guess what? It's not inside of this TCP stream 112. That would be a whole nother TCP session. So for the data connection, they would do a three-way handshake. There would be other ports involved, 20 at the server side, some high number port at the client side. So even though we're looking at the control channel with this display filter right here, we're not really looking at the FTP data, the actual transfer of the file. So what we could do looking at this, we could say, you know what, it's right here, packet 5726, where he's requesting frog.jpg. So let's go to 5726. We'll select that. We can then turn off the display filter and take a look at the play-by-play that's happening between .47 and .30 back and forth from that point on. Let's go ahead and we'll go to 5726. I'm going to clear off my display filter. So 5726 is now at the very top of my display. It's currently highlighted. And I want to go ahead and put a display filter just between those two addresses. So it doesn't look like there's a whole bunch of other FTP conversations happening, but if there were, having a display filter between just those two IP addresses would help us narrow the playing field. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to select this, right click, and say I want to go ahead and do a conversation filter. Now in this conversation filter, we're going to select IP and not TCP. Why is that? If we selected TCP, we have multiple TCP sessions going on between the client and the server. We have the control channel to the well-known port of 21, and we also have the data channel to port 20 with standard FTP. So we don't want to miss any part of our conversation, so I'm just going to put the display filter based on the two IP addresses involved. We'll click that, and our new display filter is in place. So now regarding this request for frog.jpg. So here's our request. And here's the response. So basically the client says, I want this. The server said, okay. And then they do a three-way handshake. So in this three-way handshake, packet 5728, we have the server initiating the three-way handshake from its well-known port of 20 for FTP data, going back to 49,555 on the client side. The client accepts that and sends back a SYNAC, and then the server finishes the three-way handshake. So now the three-way handshake is complete, and now we can transfer the actual file. And that, my friends, is what's happening right here. So packets 5731 and 5732 are the actual transfer of the data that we're interested in. So if we right-click on that and say I want to follow the TCP stream, that'll open up a brand new window just for that TCP stream. And this right here is a little telltale sign that stands for JPEG File Interchange Format. So we know we have the right content. All we need to do is just save this. So we'll click on Save As. And I'm going to put it right here in the Nugget files as well. And I believe the name of that file that was being retrieved was frog.jpg. Although we could call it our image or whatever you wanted to call it, .jpg. The actual file name isn't going to matter too much as long as you have some program that can interpret that and open that file on your local file system. So any image viewer in this case would be able to see that file. So we'll click on Save. I'll close this and let's bring in that file location. So here is frog.jpg. If we open it up, there's the frog that individual or someone had downloaded via FTP that we have now reassembled and created as a local file from the capture. In this video, we've taken a look at how simple it is to export HTTP objects, which include graphic image files, and how we could find and reassemble downloads such as FTP by extracting that information from Wireshark. Your homework assignment is really simple. It's to do what you've seen me do in this video. The preferences file for the profile and the capture file, along with the images that we've demonstrated in this video, are all waiting for you in the Nugget Lab files area. I've had a great time. I'm so glad you've joined me. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.